Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs. This week's special guest is JC Granger. JC is a digital marketing expert and founder of Infinity Marketing Group, a firm focused on B2B tech branding and lead generation. JC has been working for more than 20 years in digital marketing, having first launched his agency in 2011. In that time, he's found particular joy in empowering tech companies to grow while discovering exponential digital sales success. Originally from Silicon Valley, JC was left with a deep understanding of the importance of technology in business and innovation. Over the years, this, combined with a degree in psychology from the University of Colorado at Boulder, led him to hone his expertise in consumer psychology and digital lead generation for the tech industry. Here to talk about digital marketing, lead generation, so much more. Join me in welcoming our guest, JC Granger. Hey JC, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for making the time for us. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
So we kind of like to go over the history of our guests' careers and kind of start at the beginning and how they got to where they are right now. Can you give us a brief overview of how you got into marketing and the route you took?
Yeah, I mean, I always really liked marketing, but I tell this really quick story about what got me into that and why I did a psychology degree versus a marketing degree. Do you remember that movie Big with Tom Hanks?
Yeah.
Right. Classic, right? Yeah. There's this scene where they're in the boardroom, right? Like he's bigger now, but he still has, he's a kid inside. And they're all this boardroom and the guy, the dad from Home Alone, I remember that was the character. He's up at the front, he's in this suit and this tie, and he's showing all these charts and graphs. He's like, look at this building that turns into a robot. Like, this can be the next biggest toy. And he's like, because look at all these charts and graphs and these numbers. And Tom Hanks keeps raising his hand. He's like, I don't get it. Right. And he's like, well, what don't you get? And he goes, well, it's not fun. And he goes, well, have you looked at the numbers? And this guy just kept pointing to the numbers and charts. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be that guy that makes decisions based on all these charts and graphs. Right. Like, I wanted to be that kid at the table, at the boardroom, just raising his hand saying, I don't get it. Like, just looking at it for what it really was. And I always liked marketing, but I really wanted to understand people better. And I figured if you understand human nature, you leave very little to chance, right? Because a lot of things can change in the world. Technology changes, cultures change, but just how we think as human beings is evolved so slowly that it's not going to really change in our lifetime, right? And so I took that, and that's what I used for as a base foundation of kind of where I take marketing from, more about that consumer psychology standpoint. And I just, as far as why we concentrate in tech, well, I'm a tech nerd from the Bay Area. Those are my people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think, sorry, I was just going to comment. I think that's really interesting that you started in psychology, because it is sort of backwards. And it's interesting. I work in marketing and advertising also. We're more on the art side. But I think so often about how valuable it would be to go back to school and learn a little bit more about psychology, things like that, just to, have a deeper understanding of the way people think. So it's interesting that you thought to do that kind of from the jump. That's really cool.
So Did you go into psychology with that in mind, or did you start a psychology, like a degree in that, and then realize it works well in marketing?
Yeah, no, it was with that in mind. Like I said, I was trying to decide, do I want to get a marketing degree or whatnot? But then I just remember that scene in that movie, and I know it sounds really dumb in a way, but like I couldn't get that one scene of that movie out of my head, and I was just like, I don't want to be the guy in the suit, that is making decisions based on. Listen, numbers don't lie, man. They're just grossly misinterpreted half the time.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, I'm doing just as an example of this, I'm doing a project right now for a client, and I do a lot of drawing and illustration. And so this is an illustration job. We're basically doing a coloring book for a big property company out in Virginia. And the idea was they were going to give this coloring book to the children of prospective tenants and things like that. And it would be this really cool thing. And so in the coloring book, they wanted to feature home designs and layouts and floor plans and all these things. And I was like, guys, who's the audience for this thing? Well, probably the children of people. I was like, what kid wants to color a house floor plan? I was like, and they've got all these cool amenities. They've got golf courses. They've got volleyball courts. They've got swimming pools. They've got all this stuff. And so I was like, well, why aren't we like having fun at the pool? Why aren't we doing this? Little, smiley faces on beach balls or something. Like, if you want the kids to color, come on.
Yeah.
And so, but it was really funny because not unlike your story, I mean, basically this was a bunch of guys sitting in the boardroom going, okay, well, how do we promote our brand to these people? And, they were looking at the numbers, or they were considering the practical matters of, actually living in their neighborhood. And they totally got away from what was fun or what was the point of doing a coloring book for children.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that you just make that parallel because it's exactly that.
I agree.
So I guess let's talk a little bit about, so I guess we've talked a little bit about sort of what your motivation was for getting into this line of work. But one thing that I kind of like to lead off with, and just because I think it'll help frame the rest of the discussion, is a little bit of like sort of definitions, right? So one of the things that gets thrown out all the time in marketing, and we've had a number of marketers on the show, people throw out terms like digital marketing and throw out terms like lead generation. But I think for the layman or for the person who's maybe a entrepreneur just getting started and they're maybe inundated with companies that are doing marketing and these types of services, do you mind explaining sort of Infinity's perspective on what is digital marketing? What is, how do we use it? What does it encompass? And then also talk a little bit about lead generation specifically.
Yeah, I mean, digital marketing is such a broad term, right? Pretty much anything that you can do on the computer can be somehow considered digital marketing. I mean, everything from even graphic design gets used in digital marketing, right? Because how else do you showcase the visual of what you're trying to say? Video editing is digital marketing because video is king for content, right? So, as far as what is it? I mean, really, if it's not radio, if it's not podcast, if it's not TV. If it's not direct mail or cold calling, well, then it's probably going to fall under digital marketing. But because that's such a broad spectrum, it really comes down to, what does your agency do, for example, for digital? So for us, we're more of a full service digital agency, but we niche down in the B2B tech arena, right? Because I think B2B is harder. And, if you ask my parents, I always do the hard thing and I'm very difficult that way. I like B2B because the wins are bigger, right? If I could sell, e-commerce stuff, which is great. I mean, there's a ton of business out there for that, but I don't get totally fulfilled if I sell, a pack of toothpicks for $1.50. You know what I mean? I like knowing that what we do, the impact we have are for $100,000 deals, multi-million-dollar deals, and mergers, acquisitions based on, getting the stock up because we, flooded the market with their advertising and branding before they were going to sell. That does it for me. As far as lead gen, the reason why, I focus a lot on lead gen specifically is because I truly believe in an actual deliverable. Like, here's the thing, branding is great. And when times are good, branding you should be doing. But I mean, we're going through COVID right now, man. Branding is not exactly the biggest priority in this emergency mode. And what's really cool about lead gen is it can give you a direct result right now that you can actually use to try to keep your company afloat. So what I've been doing recently, out of nowhere, I wasn't trying to do this. This just happened, is I've been starting to giving a lot of consult for companies on how to go into emergency mode. I give the analogy of like, it's like if you get lost in the woods and the temperature drops and you're going to die of hypothermia, your body's like, listen, I know you like to play piano, but the fingers got to go, man. Okay. Right. Like, it's like, you got to prioritize. It's not a comfortable decision. Some of the things that you have to do, it's not comfortable to lay people off. It's not comfortable to stop doing SEO or branding, but you really you got to survive the core. Right? Your heart and lungs and your organs are the most important, not the extremities. And don't get me wrong, it's a temporary thing. Obviously, you can't be in emergency mode forever. And things will get better. And then you can bring those employees back and you can reinvest into SEO and bigger branding and things like that. But I've been really focusing on trying to help companies understand how to survive this pandemic and even thrive. There's a lot. The one upside that if you figure out how to survive, not only can you survive, but you might actually gobble up more market share than you had before, because a lot of companies, unfortunately, are not going to be set up to survive. And that is a harsh reality, but I'm trying to help the people who can.
Yeah, you mentioned COVID, and one of my questions was going to ask you how things have changed with the COVID situation, especially marketing, other than, like the same sappy music and we're all in this together line. I think my favorite one right now is the toilet paper, Charmin bears, saying we're all in this together. And it's just like, I just want to, every time something like that comes on, I want to shut the TV off. And it drives me insane. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because it seems like every commercial is the same in regards.
Yeah, I mean, you can always rely on big companies to just grab the trending hashtag and run with it. And listen, here's the thing: we can judge it all we want, but it's working, right? I don't like it any more than you do, by the way. I want to mute every time or turn it off. But let's be clear: Charmin is crushing it, and not because they're just a toilet paper company. Because they're Charmin. See, like there's a ton of toilet paper companies. You go down the aisle when there was toilet paper available. You could go down the aisle. You could count, 40 different brands, right? But Charmin specifically, they're doing what they know is going to appeal to the masses. Now, to answer your first question, though, which was, I'm sorry, actually repeat that first question. It was about
how things have changed in the marketing world with COVID. You brought up how SEO might have to go and focus on something else when I didn't even think of that. I mean, part of a digital campaign to me includes SEO.
Absolutely. It includes branding. It includes all these things that in any other circumstance would be content. All this would be great. But here's, like I said, the extremities have to go. And if it doesn't bring if it's not possible to bring an immediate return, right, then it's got to go at least temporarily. Now, that being said, there is an exception I'll give for SEO. Well, here, let me back up. To answer your question first, as far as what's changed, basically what hasn't changed. Like everything has changed, okay?
Yeah.
No one listening to this has gone through this. Even if you went through the housing crash recession, even if you went through the bubble burst, in early 2000s, it's still literally nothing like this. This is so far above that. So everything has changed, but what's happened is that certain things, and again, some people, unfortunately, they're going to just stay the course and they're going to die a death of 1,000 cuts. Okay. Other people are going to cut their marketing budgets altogether because unfortunately, that's one of the first things to go. And they're going to be dead in 90 days, no matter what. Because if you have a dry pipeline, it doesn't matter if you did everything else right. So what I'm trying to implore onto companies is say, listen, don't cut your marketing budget. Listen, if you have to get rid of in-house employees in marketing, that's maybe something you have to do temporarily. You might have to furlough them. That's a hard decision. Nobody wants to do that. Okay. You could bring them back later. But for example, outsourcing to a marketing agency is really smart because you get more expertise. They're paying for all the softwares and everything that you would normally have to pay for yourself. And because you're not their only client, you get it at a way better rate than you would the hard and soft costs that come with in-house employees. Now, again, I'm not advocating to be, trying to get people to cut jobs, right? What I'm saying is that for temporarily, you're going to probably have to outsource a lot of things, including your marketing. Now, here's why you don't cut your marketing budget. What you do is you reroute that money to different spots. So for example, anything that's long-term, SEO is long-term, right? If you were just starting an SEO plan or you're halfway through it, you're going to have to scrap it right now, period. The exception, if you are a company that is already within that second year of your SEO, and you're already on the first page of Google, and you're already driving leads, and you're still currently, to this day, driving leads every single day through SEO, keep it, okay? I'm not saying to stop something that is already, if it's already 80% of your leads, well, of course you don't want to cut that, okay? But if that's not where it was at, if you were starting and working on it and you're trying to build it up to there, or you're trying to come up with a new idea of marketing and someone says, let's do SEO, ignore them, okay? We do SEO. We're not pitching that right now for obvious reasons, okay? So that's because that's a long-term play. If you're doing social media, organic social media specifically, and again, your business does not completely rely on it right now, you got to cut it because again, that's more of a branding angle. If you're doing a bunch of video stuff, right? If you're doing long form videos, if you're doing 2-3 minutes and above, right? You're going to have to cut it. If you're going to keep video, 15 and 30-second clips, cost you a lot less and they go a lot farther. Okay. Now, paid social media, do that. Okay. If you don't do it, if you haven't done already, don't start experimenting right now. Go to what you know works. So if you were spending money on Facebook ads and it was working before, keep spending money there because that's a direct, immediate return. The ad goes live. People click on the ad right away. They end up on a page somewhere, right? That's an immediate return of action. So like I said, long story short is, if you're doing text message marketing for e-commerce, if you're doing email marketing, email should always be happening, by the way. Email is that resilient I mean, it's like the cockroach of marketing. I love it. Like it will never die no matter what. And it is just so resilient, right? And right now it's again, it's still king because everyone has email. Everyone uses it. They use it on their mobile devices as well. So things that I recommend that people keep doing or start is email marketing, any kind of paid advertising, whether it be through Google or social media platforms, text message marketing if you're on the e-commerce side for things like that for specials or discounts. Trying to think of what else here. Like LinkedIn, if you're B2B, doing LinkedIn outreach, direct, whether it be manual or automated or a mix of the two, definitely do that. But do you need 3 articles a week anymore? No, you don't. Do you need social media posts that are just there to make your audience happy, let them know you're there? No, you don't. So there's some things you're going to have to cut. PR, gotta go. Right. And again, now, if any of these things I'm listing were things that you were already getting 80% of your business from and it's going great, okay, fine, keep it. But literally, that's usually not the case. So that's kind of what I'm telling people right now is you got to protect the core right now. This is survival mode.
Yeah, I think that's a really great observation. This idea, I mean, because I think on its face, everybody understands that we must adapt to the times, right? That there must be adaptation. But I like the way that you put it in that, we're not telling you to kill everything, but be strategic in what you're doing. And I think
even then it's temporary.
Yeah, and I think so many people jump, and make a quick change, or maybe they think now is the time. If I start dumping money into Facebook, maybe this is where we'll find our leads, that kind of thing. And so I could see a lot of impulsivity right now, but I like what you're talking about. It sounds like more of a measured approach.
It is, yeah.
So I guess let's talk then. So, I mean, we've just discussed, 100 different channels, 100 different things. How can people avoid becoming overwhelmed with their online marketing? So, one of the things that, especially now during crisis, it makes sense, like you said, focus on the core. So maybe you're cutting off some of these extraneous things you've been doing and you're really focusing on your top few. But how do you work with your clients to make sure that they're not overwhelmed or that there's too much going on?
Sure. I like to start with just one thing first. I like to say, so for example, for us, this is just an example. A lot of different agencies are going to have different answers to this as far as what they would start with. But we, for example, we're really, really good at LinkedIn lead generation, very fast lead generation, because we have we built kind of a monster when it comes to this, right? So what I tell companies, I say, listen, they're like, well, how can you help us? How can you, how can we survive this? I say, let's start with one thing and master it. So the first thing as you put them on is they say, well, okay, we are going to do your LinkedIn lead gen. I want to either gain access to either your profile as the owner or one of your salespeople's profiles. And what we're going to do is we're going to revamp their profile. We're going to revamp their targeting. We're going to revamp their messaging. And then we are going to do it for them. So we have a done for you service, right? Where we reach out to 40 or 50 people in their laser targeted market, which we can search by, industry, job titles, location, it's company size, whatever. So whoever they say their perfect target market is, we say, okay, we're going to go after 40 to 50 of those people per day, right? So you're looking at around 1,500 or so per month. And that's a lot, especially for your target market. Now, those people who connect with them, we're going to put them through a drip series in LinkedIn, which is more authority and rapport building style, not very salesy. But then we're also going to take the information from that person's profile and we're going to import it into their CRM because now they have access to that for either cold calling, email marketing, or they can even use that list as retargeting for their Facebook or campaigns, things like that. So they can do a lot with it just by us giving them, importing that information out of LinkedIn into their possession. So that's a big deal too. But the sales part comes in where we actually then set up a 4 or 5 part email drip series for them. That's a direct outreach email, not a newsletter. Right? A lot of people think email marketing, they think graphical newsletter and it's not personalized, it's just information. No. What we do is these are direct one-on-one sales drip series emails with call to actions for, booking a time to talk or clicking this link or downloading this white paper, whatever works best for their sales process. And we integrate that for that one person that we're doing that for. Now that thing we pitch first because that works very fast. The company gets a chance to see what it's like to work with us. How good do we communicate? Is our process clean, right? Are we getting them the results that we promised? Are we malleable and are we pivoting when one thing doesn't work and we switch to another? Are we doubling down on things that do work? So that's a way for both companies, ourselves and them, to work together immediately on something that is fast and easy so they can get a result. And once they go, crap, that really worked, they've got two choices at the point. Either A, they can keep adding more of those, right? They can put one for every salesperson, right? Now they got, 10 different lead gen, systems going at once, pumping in all these leads for them, and they're getting ROI like right away. The second thing they could do is add more services. They're like, well, what else you got? I'm like, glad you asked. And then we would go to the second priority, which most likely would be email, right? Because that's, again, a direct, and I mean like buying lists, cleaning them up, warming them up, and then getting those into a top of the funnel that brings it down into the call to action. And then after that, I'd say the last priority, if I'm doing the top three, I'd say then it goes into the paid campaigns, really making sure that you have the right ads in front of those people. And the best part is it all comes full circle. So once you graduate to the paid campaigns, you can literally send your ads and target the people that you've been connecting with on LinkedIn and emailing, right? So now they're seeing it. Now they're getting a message from you. They're getting a one-on-one email from a salesperson, and they're getting a newsletter coming in for about the whole company, and they're seeing your ads when they scroll on Facebook, right? So when you really see how all these things start to connect together, so that's how we are personally doing it right now, because that is the stepped, phased approach, and letting each step rationalize the next one so that you don't spend too much money and blow your budget when you honestly don't have much to blow right now because you're trying to conserve.
Yeah, one thing that you sort of touched on in there, and I think it might be worth spending a minute talking about, and maybe it's just because I've been seeing more of this stuff lately, talking about sort of niching into audiences and picking your audience, that sort of thing. I've come across, and maybe you've seen the same in your business, most people, or many people who don't really even know who they're talking to. They've put together a business or whatever, but they don't actually know who their guy is. They might have some idea, or maybe they're in a specific industry. But as far as who they're marketing to or who they would try and target, if you're saying, or pitching them into LinkedIn, and you're going to say, okay, we're going to target your guy. I wondered if you had any advice for small businesses, people just getting started, things like that, in trying to discover that niche or sort of uncover who their guy is or who their customer is. Just because I think, like I say, so many people approach things in a very general way, right? There's a sophisticated version of Facebook marketing, and there's a non-sophisticated version of it. And I've seen a lot of people come from a non-sophisticated version where they just reach out to men and women 30 to 60 or something like that. Yeah. When really what they need to do is men and women 30 to 60 who love woodworking, who also whittle, who also do whatever, whatever it is. And so I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about a process you might take sort of a green customer through. And maybe you don't have a lot of experience with those people, but I think
I do. Really, I mean, I had my agency for 9 years. So even though we don't work with right now anyway, with small mom and pop, so to speak, nothing against them. It's just, what we do is more of a full solution for kind of that high, small to medium size. Yeah.
Well, and it seems like in technology specifically, a lot of them are building a tool for a specific use
exactly.
case.
As far as what we call it is there's a persona exercise that I put people through, right? And this is kind of where that psychology comes in a little bit, by the way, because I've done this exercise with people, and I don't think I've ever had someone say, yeah, no, we already did that, so this didn't help. What I do is I literally tell them, I was like, listen, I'm like, close your eyes for a second, and just, I want you to picture, you're going to pick one person, right? If you had a gun to your head and all the marketing we did for you, or that anyone did, could only be shown to one individual in the whole planet. That's it, right? You can only market to this one person. You have to sell this one person first and no one else. Who are they? First I say, okay, are they male or female? And they'll say male. So, okay, great. Does this person, how old are they? The exact age, not a range. How old are they, right? And when they do this, because I tell them, I say, pull from your knowledge of who you've sold before, right? Who was the easiest person to sell, and start thinking about this person. They say, okay, the person's 50 years old. They are a vice president of marketing at a wholesale distribution company in Kansas. We get down to that. I say, okay, how many kids do they have? They said, what? I said, how many kids do they have? They've got 2 kids. I said, what kind of degrees do they have? They're like, he's got a master's in science, or something like that, or biotech or whatever. And that's how he got into distribution, because they make, whatever for that. Okay. And we really go through this whole exercise, and some of it seems really bizarre, but I'm literally trying to have them paint this picture to the point where they can literally form an image. They see this person's whole life. They see what they have when they wake up. Do they drink tea or coffee? Do they, are they in the office by 7 or 9? Do they have to pick their kids up after school? And all this, a lot of this sounds completely irrelevant, but I assure you it's not, because when we're done with that exercise, once that person can quite literally describe them like they could describe their own father. Okay. Now you know your target market. Now, that being said, obviously, we can't just set up marketing to only that one person, but we have a focal point now. See, once you have your focal point of all that data, now I can go into Facebook and say, okay, now I can't just pick people who are only 55. I have to pick an age range of 50 to 60. Okay, great. But that's the one I picked then. So you're going to have the peripheral around it. But the focal point is so important, because if you pick your perfect person to sell to, then when you set up your targeting, you can set up the targeting to that particular persona and within 2-3 degrees around it. And then after you've exhausted that, then you can expand it a little more and a little more. So that's what prevents people from doing that shotgun method. I like the sniper approach better. One shot, one kill, and then you move on, right? But that's where we start. We start at the focal point, and then we allow our targeting to expand from that point. And this way, we're always optimizing the audience.
Have you run into instances where people are sort of off the mark? They maybe, guess, yeah, we built this software to be a project management software, but it turns out people actually use it to manage their family finances or something. Has that happened in your experience where somebody chose Harold was their guy, but it turns out Frank is actually way more into their product. How do you, and I maybe you uncover that through this process you're talking about, the sort of continual evolution or this continuing to move out. But I wonder if somebody is off target, if you've run them through this exercise and they believe their customer is one person, how might you uncover whether they're A, correct, or B, need to, reassess?
Well, so I typically find that startups are the ones that have the issue more than anything about when their demographic changes, right? Obviously, if there's some company doing $3 million a year already and they've been around 5 years, they already pretty much figured out who their audience is. But with startups specifically, they create this software or this product that they believe is going to solve this problem for these types of people. And what I find is that every now and then we'll be in a system where we do that whole target audience thing and we start sending ads and we're doing all the right things. We're doing everything we know is correct that should get a response. And every now and then, sometimes the response is dismal. Now, this is good news and bad news. Bad news is, okay, well, yeah, you just spent some money to find out that that's not the great target audience. Good news is you learn something, right? We've had clients where they literally pivoted their entire software because they realized that not only was this audience not responding well, but what started happening was that this other audience was coming in out of nowhere. But this is where making sure your infrastructure is set up is key. Making sure you have your analytics set up properly, making sure that you're open and that you're getting replies on social media or emails and you're listening to them. If your target market is lawyers, for example, because I'll give you an example. We did have a client that had a software that it was a document management software, right? They said, hey, we want to use this for bankers. Right? They said this is going to help them with their mortgages and because there's all these different paperwork that go all these different areas. They said this software will help them organize their paperwork digitally. And we know that bankers have a problem with that. Okay, so we started doing that. And listen, the response was okay, but it wasn't great. Well, out of nowhere, it started turning out that like all these different types of industries started seeing like funeral homes for some reason started liking it. It was really bizarre, right? We had lawyers that were coming at, and so the inbound traffic that was finding it was responding better than our outbound traffic to who we thought the audience would be. And so, so they pivot, which is good. So I think it's important that here's the thing, you're going to spend a lot of money learning stuff when you first start a company. Okay. That's cost of business. It's not wasted. It's only wasted if you keep spending money on the wrong thing after you've learned that it doesn't work. Now you're stupid. Sorry, but maybe you're not going to survive business, right? So yes, the short answer, this happens every now and then. It doesn't happen all that often. Most people who start a business that solves a problem is because they personally experienced that problem. This particular company we're talking about, the owner was not a banker before. Right? They didn't live that life. They heard that this was an issue and they try to jump onto an opportunity. They didn't come from a point of true pain and experience themselves. So, that happens. So, if you're starting a business or starting a software or anything like that, it's usually better when it comes from someone who lived that and they're trying to solve a problem that they either had before or have now. In which case you're going to hit your target audience 100 out of 100 times. But if you're coming from a different angle where you've seen that it's been a problem for a different audience, you might be surprised sometimes that that's not, you might have to pivot and change a little bit on that.
Yeah, well, and I think one observation just from that whole thing that I think is really interesting and kind of refreshing to talk about is I think so many when we think about marketing and we talk about targeting in sort of a general sense, it feels like we're going to leverage technology, we're going to slam this guy, we're going to get it, it's going to be perfect. But I think that what you sort of have alluded to, and I think is kind of a good thing just to sort of I guess call out, is this idea that it's okay to fail. Like you may not get this right the first time. Like, fail fast. Don't sit and fiddle around with this for a long time. Yeah. But at the same time, it's okay. You may not get it the first time, and that's all right. Like that's part of the process. We have to evolve. We have to figure this out. And I think that perfection or limited budgets or whatever are the things that keep small businesses from starting into digital marketing and starting into doing some of these things. This fear or trepidation that, we have finite amount of money. If we don't get it right, we'll have blown it. And I think that your perspective that, even if that was the case, it's still a learning, I think is valuable.
Well, and here's the thing too, is I find that smaller companies, because they're trying to conserve and preserve a budget, they're looking for immediate return. And what I think they're not understanding is return comes in many forms. Obviously, the main form that people want is money return. But look at it this way. Big Fortune 500 companies will spend millions of dollars just to find out what's not working. They know that this money they are dedicating to find out all the ways to not do this, okay? Because they understand, and don't get me wrong, they can afford it too. But I think a part of that mindset has to be adopted by smaller companies because sometimes they demand immediate results on something and they don't realize that one of the results that's very beneficial is knowing that that doesn't work. I mean, there's that famous saying like Thomas Edison figured out 100 different ways not to make a light bulb, right? Before he made the light bulb, right? Like that's the entire point. So, I would encourage anyone listening who has their own business that if they're spending money on marketing and they feel like it's wasted, it's not. You're eliminating possibilities. It's an artillery range, right? You fire one and, it went too far left, okay, 2 degrees right. Fire again, okay, too far south, 2 degrees up. And eventually you dial in to where you're hitting that target every single time. And in digital marketing, we call that optimization. You'll hear that term all the time. I'll tell you right now that if you're spending a healthy budget, depending on industry is going to depend on what your budget is, that is considered competitive budget. You got to give it at least 3 months before you start hitting the upswing. Now, can you get lucky and get immediate results in first, 2 weeks? Yeah, it happens all the time. Is that something you should rely on or even, demand? Absolutely not. Because almost all types of marketing take at least 90 days to truly dial in on. Your first 30 is mostly infrastructure. It's getting you set up to properly gauge what's happening and to make sure you have the right pieces in place. Your next 30 days is mostly about that initial push out. And then you start getting data back from that push. And then your third 90 days is about taking that data that you got in, analyzing what the hell that means, adjusting your campaigns, and then pushing again. Now that second push, that's where you're going to get your big ROI. That's where you're going to start with your big ROI. 6 months in, you're going to be doing even better. 12 months in, you can't lose, right? Now it's so damn predictable that you have numbers that are so predictable that that, hey, when we spend $1, we make $40. Like that's just something right? But you're not going to get there in 30 days. That's not going to happen. And if you're not patient enough and you don't understand the value of knowing what's not working, so you never have to do that again, then, it might be a hard run for you, to be completely honest, but, if you get the right agency or get the right consultants that can guide you in that, I think they can make it a lot more palatable and have that managed expectation. I would just be really aware of anyone who says, oh yeah, we're going to crush it right now and you're going to love it, it's going to be amazing. Man, they're selling something. They don't care about you. When I talk to prospects, I tell them, I said, listen, everyone's going to try to sell you rainbows and unicorns. And on this call, I'm going to paint thunderstorms and lightning. And if you are still listening by the end of this call, okay, then we can talk because at least you'll have the truth and the reality instead of, what people just want you to believe about it.
So we've kind of covered it a little bit already. LinkedIn versus Facebook. LinkedIn obviously is more business to business. I'm assuming your budget's going to be a little bit higher if you're going the LinkedIn route versus the Facebook route. What kind of analytical tools do you use to kind of niche and figure out what's working and what's not? Because I'm sure Facebook has their own kind of tracking software and LinkedIn has theirs. What do you use to kind of figure out what the right approach is?
Well, so that's a good question because analytics comes up a lot. Depending on what your needs are, it depends where you want to start, right? Because budget is part of it as well. Some tools cost a lot more. So I'll give a few answers so that I can kind of cover the different range. One thing you got to have as a base standard, no matter what, you got to have your Google Analytics set up on your website, right? Because all roads lead back to Rome. Okay,
Sure.
Your website is Rome, and you don't necessarily have to have the best analytics on Facebook or LinkedIn within those systems. If you have really good analytics set up on your website, it's going to tell you a lot of information about who's showing up there, and that's big. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have a marketing CRM tool like HubSpot or SharpSpring or Pardot or Marketo. And the reason being is those big companies, those big marketing CRMs, they have an additional database that they can cross-reference. So for example, we use SharpSpring because it's an agency-based one where, and we can license it to our clients for like a third of the price that they would pay on HubSpot, but they get all the same features. And so for example, let's say you come to my website, okay? Now, let's say I don't know anything about you yet because you came there organically, right? You didn't click on any of my ads, so there was no cookie dropped onto your computer. Like I didn't have any way of really getting information. If the company you're using for analytics and that code on your website knows you already from something else, well, then it tells me. It's like, hey, this is so and so from this company, and here's their information, right? There's other there's softwares out there where if somebody were to fill out half the form and bail, that they will go and then find the rest of the information, fill it out for them and send it to the company, right? So there's a lot of great tools, but I would say first, make sure your Google Analytics has to be very, professionally set up and make sure that it's running right so you can actually get that data when they do get to your website. There's not a whole lot you can do when it comes to like Facebook and LinkedIn with their native platforms because it's just going to be what it's going to be, right? Now, as far as the third-party one, I like Acquisio. Acquisio is really cool because Acquisio is for more of your paid campaigns. It can give you a lot more data. It can collate. So you could be running, let's say, a Google, Yahoo, Bing, Facebook, Instagram campaign. You can run all these campaigns at once, right? And it'll collate that data in there for you and can give you a lot more insights than you might be able to get necessarily just by relying on what when people get to the site, right? So Acquisio is really good when it comes to the analytics for paid campaigns. I'm trying to think of, I'll think of a couple more that I'll give you guys later that you can maybe put in the show notes for your audience. If you just shoot me an email, remind me, and I'll send you the links to some that we really like. So I think your audience could benefit from those that we've vetted before. But yeah, so we'll get you some over there of that. But again, it's really important to make sure your analytics on your website is going good, and try to look for third-party sites for paid campaigns that can give you more insights on the data, because they'll sometimes cross-reference with data centers that have behavioral groupings, right? So behavioral marketing is a big deal as far as, what are they doing, right? So this might say this person came in and they clicked on this, but this person has bought these things in the last 30 days, right? You can't know that just by a regular analytics tool, right? So, some people have a problem with this because it kind of gets into that gray area of privacy. Facebook took out a lot of their things that they used to track people with because of the issues they ran into. That being said, that data was still out there. There's still a lot of data companies that have that data already, and they know those things about you. Your credit card companies, by the way, they track this stuff. I could buy a list right now because when you ever go and like go to a restaurant and you use your credit card and then all of a sudden you get an email from them, a receipt. You didn't give them your email, but that restaurant just emailed you, right?
Well, actually, I think Walmart is starting to pull records based off of your credit card purchases. People have been posting. I've seen two or three different posts about how they go to the Walmart's website and all of a sudden they're recommending every item they've ever purchased there based off of their credit card history. Yeah. My mom actually hit me up about it. I told her about there's a book called The Power of Habit, where they base their the phone number that you put in when you're loyal to rewards cards. They can actually predict if a girl's pregnant or not based off of her shopping habits. And there was an actual lawsuit based off of that because they sent a mailer to this girl who was underage. Her dad didn't know that she was pregnant, and based off of her shopping habits, they informed him that she was you know, and it's
that's definitely going too far.
And it's in that book, The Power of Habit. It's a very interesting read. So if you are looking for something,
read that book.
Yeah, it's great.
I like that already.
Yeah.
I don't like what they did with it again, and I want to make sure I'm an advocate for understanding behaviors where it's beneficial, not detrimental, right? It's not about saying, hey, we heard you're pregnant. Like, that's not a good play, right? What I'm saying is that, for example, you have an email that's tied to your credit card. There are data companies out there that have that email, which means they have the purchasing history. Listen, for businesses, here's the benefit for businesses. The benefit is, again, if I have a client, for example, and they do some CBD stuff, okay? I keep about 10 to 20% of my client base completely random. I do that just what I call keep it spicy. Like, I love B2B. I love B2B tech. I really do. But I think if that's all I did, then I'd probably feel wanting more. So I do take on some random clients from different industries. We have a CBD client that we were talking to about a list, and we could literally, because they can't do paid advertising, right? CBD is very restricted when it comes to that stuff. So I said, hey, I could buy you an email list that has the email of every person, who has bought CBD related products in the last 30 days, because it's literally the email that's tied to their credit card. So, I mean, that's a hell of a list. If you think about it from their point of view, they're like, oh my God, you're telling me we can email people about our CBD product, and this person has already bought CBD stuff in the last 30 days and you can guarantee it? I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So from the business side, there's a huge benefit to accessing that kind of data and having that. From the consumer side, and listen, after we clock out, we're consumers too, so we do worry about our privacy. I think there's a healthy balance in there. I don't agree with companies doing like what you said, where they're going that extra, saying, hey, be pregnant. Not a good thing.
It's kind of it's really actually kind of creepy, just the abilities that are out there. How is AI kind of playing a role in digital marketing these days? Has it changed things?
So here's the thing that's interesting about AI. So AI, when used at its more fundamental basic level, is insanely helpful. I think what happening is now, it's kind of like how, and like on Silicon Valley, like they were going to throw money at anything that said augmented reality, or they were throwing money at anything that said machine learning, right? If you had .io as your domain, it was like, take my money. Great, here you go. And the problem is, I think there was this overcorrection in the market where everything became AI. And I think people don't understand the fundamental of how AI really works, right? Machine learning is actually a much better way to think about it, right? Because machine learning says, listen, I'm taking this data and I learned from what happened here, so I'm going to adjust automatically and I'm going to try it again. Now that's machine learning, right? And that's really productive. Where people start getting off into the stratosphere here in Pluto about AI is they think, oh, well, this thing is smarter than me. And it's not. It's actually dumber than you. It's just paying attention more. That's all, right? It's having to learn. It's a baby, right? And it's taking the information and it's growing with this information. So how has it changed the marketing industry? It's changed in a good way when it comes to analytics, for example. Analytics with machine learning and AI has been fantastic because it's giving you these things. Again, like you said, it says, listen, here's what we can figure out about this person based on what they're doing, based on their actions. So for example, if you're using HubSpot or SharpSpring, for example, and you go to my website 5 times and you're there for 2 minutes of time and you've clicked on 7 different pages, it automatically now knows through its learning history that you are very likely to take that next action with me, whether it be wanting to get on a phone call, wanting to download something, or wanting to buy something from me right away. So it learns the behaviors of the people coming to your site and it starts to score them. And when it hits a certain threshold of a score, it kicks it down to sales and says, hey, sales, you should call this guy right now, or you should email him. You ever been on a website and then like 10 minutes later, you got an email from them, right? Like that, there's a reason why, because your actions were learned through the system and classified you in a way that made the experience better. And to be honest, if I'm on someone's website and then they email me later saying, hey, how can I help? That kind of goes a long way with me. That tells me a lot about your company, even if it's automated, right? That they don't have to do it manually. I just feel good that they're doing it, right? So AI has helped in that respect. Where it has hurt the industry is that too many products that come out claiming AI have faulty coding or scripts that are giving you literally false intelligence, right? It's automatic, right? It's advanced, but it's not giving you the real narrative because it's not a human being. It can't tell that. So I think if you use AI in your marketing to a certain level so that you can take it over as a human, I think that's a good medium. If you're using AI to try to predict everything that's going to be happening next and to tell you all these things that realistically are probably not logical to rely on a computer for, then I think you've overcorrected and you're wasting money. And even then, if you overcorrect, you might spend money on something this AI spit out saying you should do this, and it's not going to work, right? So I think that has to be taken with a grain of salt. I think that you should use it to help score and understand the behavior, but not to predict too far after that.
Yeah, so this last thing I want to get into just here in these last few minutes with you. One thing I observed on your website, and this is sort of just like general business centricness, but it's something that I liked that I observed that you do, and I just wanted to explore it a little bit with you, is I noticed on your website you have a little counter that says basically you have X number of spots available for new clients. Mm-hmm. And what struck me about that is I think especially people in sort of a startup mindset, the idea is grab all you can get. You know, we're happy to work for anybody who will come our way. We'll sell you everything. And especially among agency owners and things like that, you see a lot of that where people take on bad clients because it's just get every client you can get. Mm-hmm. And but what I thought was particularly innovative about what you're doing or about that idea is it creates a little bit of urgency. Hey, I want to be inside the club. Maybe this is your psychology working for you. But there's something to this idea of actually limiting, the number of clients that you would take on at any given time so that you can properly serve them. And I think that that's maybe unique at least in the agency business as I've seen it. Most people have this idea of sort of infinite scale. They don't really think of, I should cut this off somewhere because at some point we become ineffective. So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about sort of the decision-making behind that and just sort of, in general business terms, sort of the importance of, not trying to be all things to everybody.
Yeah, sure. I'd be lying if I said that part of it wasn't a little bit of, call to action, urgency, psychology, but that's probably about 10% of that decision to put that on our website. The real decision is based off of, I actually listened to a podcast. It was like, God, it was a year ago. I wish I could tell you who the person was, but they were an agency owner themselves. And I got this idea from them, not for the counter, but they said that they literally in-house limit how many clients they take. And the idea was controlled growth. Here's the thing about the agency world in particular, and I can't speak for many other industries, but I can tell you with the agency world, most people who start agencies are pretty good at sales. So they start sell. And what they lack is infrastructure, right? So the whole thing that, they start their company and they start on this big spike of new clients, new money coming in, and they're like, hey, we'll jump off the cliff and figure out how to fly on the way down, right? And don't get me wrong, there is a value to that mindset in certain situations, right? The problem is when you sustain it that way, it becomes a house of cards. It's tall, but it doesn't have a middle. And the slightest amount of pressure or weight is going to collapse the whole thing, okay? And what I see a lot of agencies, there's a reason why most agencies don't make it past year 3, because it turns out it takes about 3 years to get a ton of sales and a ton of companies coming on and to watch it all crash and burn because you didn't have the infrastructure to support it. So I learned that lesson very early on with other things. And so we built our company as controlled growth, right? We were kind of like the slow and steady wins the race kind of thing. And then everyone else they're passing us, they're doing bigger and better. And that's fine until you have that black swan event like 2008. You get the black swan event like now with COVID. And all of a sudden, all those companies that were going fast and hard and taking on everything and every client they could get their hands on, they're crashing and burning because they can't support the rest of it. So what we did, we said, okay, we want to make sure that we only grow with as many clients as we can support with our current staff. If we want to take on more, that's fine. But we just want to, then we're going to go a step forward, hire one more person, let's say, and then say, okay, build the infrastructure around them and we can take on maybe 3 more clients, for example, right? Also too, just personally, I don't want to be that agency where I have, 200 people in the office. I want to know everyone's name. I am a very personal type of CEO. I'm not a micromanager. Honestly, I don't have the time to do it. But because I only hire experts, I really need to get to know them. And I don't want to have a situation where I walk in the office one day and go, who's that? Right? That's just not my personal style. There's nothing bad about that. There are definitely big agencies that serve, thousands of clients and they're big like that's fine. For me personally, we put that limit on our website. And we really do change that number. Like if we get another big client, like that number, I think it's at 4 right now. I think I can take 4 major clients right now, like comfortably, where we can serve them the way they need to be served without, thinning out too much and then, not be able to communicate with them well. When we sign our next big client, I'm going to turn that down to 3, right? Now, then if we hire 2 more people, I can turn that back up to 6, for example, right? So that it is, I do that to be transparent and say, listen, we might not take you on, and not because we don't like you, but because maybe we don't think, we want to make sure that we can serve you properly, and that we're only taking on 2. It also helps us make sure we're taking on the right clients for ourselves. It's a 2-way relationship, right? That's why also like our LinkedIn lead gen thing, for example, we have a couple of just one-off services that are by themselves before we pitch the full boat, so to speak, because I very much believe in, date before you get married, right? It's a 2-way relationship. The client might love you, but you might not love the client, or you might love the client and they might not love you. And when you start with one thing and in a smaller commitment, it allows both parties to really get to know each other and see if they really mesh, if they're going to do well. And then from there, the skies are the limit, right? But yeah, to answer your question, with the counter that we put on our website, we try to keep it as accurate as possible based on our how many employees we have to do the work, and just also, also if we take on too many at once, if we get 3 at once, I'll put that counter to 0 and put a waiting list, because we have to get through that first 90 days with these 3 big clients that all came out at the same time, because onboarding and infrastructure is very time intensive, and it would be malpractice for us to take on a 4th company when we couldn't handle that kind of bandwidth in that short amount of time. So sometimes that counter says 0, fill out your information here to be put on the waiting list. We'll contact you once we're ready to take on more. So I think it's a big benefit. But that's our style. I'm not going to impose that on anyone.
No, I just think it was kind of interesting. You don't see a lot of people in business purposefully trying to throttle. Now, as you said, some people may do this kind of behind the scenes. Maybe they're doing that, but that transparency I thought was really interesting and something I hadn't seen before. Among agencies. I spent a lot of time looking at agencies, and so it was something that I haven't seen personally out there a lot. And I think a lot of small agencies specifically could really benefit from that sort of discipline, because I think so many of them are quick to grab as many as they can, sort of like you were describing, to this rapid rise, and then, where are they in 3 years?
Yeah.
And exactly. So that's great. Well, cool. So JC, we got to wrap up. I think that was a great little thing to go out on. For our audience, where can they track you down? How can they learn more about what you do and find you online?
Yeah, well, our website is infinitymgroup.com. So infinity with a Y and then the letter M, like marketing, group.com. We're putting out a lot of like white papers and stuff too. So depending, if someone goes to the website and they have questions about, if they want some information on LinkedIn stuff or social media or whatnot, every services page we have has a downloadable free PDF that they can, there's no catch. It's like, hey, download it, learn from it. If you want our help, great. But yeah, they can, if they're more of a phone call person, they can call us at 303-834-7344. And I don't normally give out my email and public stuff, but for your audience specifically, because I think they could benefit, my email is jc@infinitymgroup.com if they feel like reaching out to me directly.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate your time, especially now during COVID and all this. Like, so many people are either really busy or really scared or really something. And so we're grateful for everybody's time.
Yeah, we're slammed right now. I'm doing like 14-hour days, 7 days a week. But what else am I going to do? I'm stuck at home.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks so much to everybody who tuned in and listened this week and every week. If you have questions for our guests or anything, feel free to check out the show notes for contact information. And we will see you all next week.